the message we have and the type of organizing we do is changed. It's not just inviting people to join and letting them know that they've got fighters in their corner. It's getting people involved based around the things that they care about and making sure that from the moment they sign, from the moment they consider signing, they know that there's a role for them to be involved.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
We are going to talk now about a really, really cool interview with the National Director of Organizing of the American Federation of Government Employees. David Cann is his name, Brother David Cann. He did an interview with Ed Flash Ferentz of the America's Workforce Radio podcast. If you like this show, you would like that show. I highly recommend it. It's a great source of knowledge about what is happening all across the country in the labor movement. It is a daily union talk radio show. Monday through Friday, he's got an hour of content every single day interviewing. He does 2 interviews, 2 guests a day from different locals across the country. I mean, it's really, really great. The breadth of people that he talks to, the diversity of experience, the diversity of topics, and it's really, really cool. I mean, you hear all the way from like rank and file workers to sitting U.S. senators to international union presidents, like in the same week. I mean, it's awesome. You should listen to it. And my National Director of Organizing, David Cann, AFGE, spoke to him about a few things, but also about the renewed effort of AFGE to organize and especially to take advantage of the opportunity that we have with the Biden administration not trying to destroy us. So the Trump administration was not friendly to federal employees, to the people who take care of our nation's veterans in the VA, to the people who administer Social Security for our elderly and Social Security disability for the people who are not able to work, for people who administer important government functions like the Corps of Engineers. He was not friendly to federal employees. He did many things to hamper our ability to advocate for ourselves and to not improve our working conditions. And so the Biden administration is not trying to destroy us. And so we want to, as a union, take advantage of that. And the way that he talks about taking advantage of this opportunity that we have while we're in a less unfriendly environment is very heartening to hear coming from the very top of my union. And I think that this is the strategy that all unions should be taking, what he talks about. And he's a relatively new hire, and I wouldn't doubt that he is somebody. This is just my speculation, but I wouldn't doubt that this is somebody that Reverend Everett Kelly specifically wanted on board because of his philosophy of organizing, because Reverend Everett Kelly has been extremely successful in organizing everywhere he has been in leadership. When he was the president of the Anniston Army Depot, the union there, their union membership increased over the course of like 5 years, more than double, from 1,200 to 2,600 members. And the same thing for District 5, which is the Southern District of the United States. We added like 20,000 members across the Southeast while he was the representative for District 5. I mean, he's a great leader. I appreciate his work. And let's listen to David Cann, National Director of Organizing for the American Federation of Government Employees, talk about how our union is going to approach bringing in new members.
We're changing the model of organizing we're doing and changing the model of union that we are, and as a result of that. A lot of conversations that union folks, good unions, our union oftentimes have had with people in the past is, you can't afford not to have a labor union. You wouldn't not have health insurance. You don't know if you're going to get sick. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't not have car insurance. It's against the law, and you don't know if you're going to have an accident. You would not have job insurance. You never know when you're going to need the ability to be represented. And that was not always, but oftentimes the pitch we made. And what we've discovered, or at the Federation, the change we're making, is that message doesn't do what we need it to do for the type of growth and the type of power building we want to be doing. We need to be doing. Because it makes folks think that the union isn't them. It makes them think that the union is a union officer or a staffer or some other person that will make change for them. And while we do have great officers and we've got great staff, I'm pleased to say I count myself amongst their number. The thing that makes real power is having people be involved in their job, having a voice on the job, being engaged. And so the message we have and the type of organizing we do is changed. It's not just inviting people to join and letting them know that they've got fighters in their corner. It's getting people involved based around the things that they care about and making sure that from the moment they sign, from the moment they consider signing, they know that there is a role for them to be involved for building power, whether that's signing petitions, whether that's going to rallies, whether that's finding a place in doing some representational or organizing or communications work themselves in their local, and building ground up based on the issues and the concerns that every single member and potential member has. And it's been absolutely transformational.
So that was our National Director of the American Federation of Government Employees, the National Director of Organizing, David Cann, on with Ed Flash Ferentz of America's Workforce Radio podcast, talking about the new model and philosophy of organization within AFGE. And it was very, very heartening to hear, because there are a lot of people who conceive of their union in this way, and there are a lot of people who foster that conception of a union as a service, of a union that is separate from the membership, of a union that is that's like health insurance or like life insurance or car insurance, or as opposed to an organization of, by, and for working people to advocate for working people, standing up for each other to make their life better. That's a totally different thing when you center the model of organization on our power comes from the members, because in every union, whether they understand it or not, or whether this is the type of thing that they want to engender in their membership, their power comes from the membership. Whether they acknowledge that or foster that conception or not, that is where their power comes from. And when you look at unions who have been able to be somewhat successful in a service model, it's basically they're running on the fumes of previous membership involvement.
Absolutely.
And where those fumes have run dry, it has taken member involvement to renew those gains, to start winning again. We can look. I mean, this is exactly what has happened at John Deere with the United Auto Workers. The United Auto Workers has, unfortunately, in a lot of cases, turned towards a model of service unionism, of unionism that sees the officers and the people that are filing the grievances and all this as separate from the workers. And what have we seen over the course of this model that has been paired with the management cooperation model of the UAW? We have seen a concessionary contract after concessionary contract after concessionary contract with the big three automakers and other UAW employers. And now, for the first time in the manufacturing sector in the United States in 40 years, we're seeing contracts where working people are making gains again. How did that happen? It happened because the membership got involved. The membership struck. The membership voted down. They didn't passively accept a tentative agreement that was handed to them by the boss. They said, no, we're not going to accept this. And they struck. And the union supported them, but they struck. They made the decision to strike. And they voted down not one, but 2 contracts at John Deere. Kellogg's did the same thing with the BCTGM. They voted down not one, but 2 contracts to try to get the best deal that they thought that they could get. It was membership involvement that has finally allowed people to begin to see gains again. And that's what it's going to take for every union, and that's what it's going to take for AFGE to be able to take advantage of this opportunity that we have, of this less unfriendly playing field, so that we are prepared in 2024 when and if, knock on wood, we have another anti-worker president, another extremely anti-worker president, extremely specifically anti-federal worker president. So I loved hearing that.
I really did
David
too.
Cann.
I so relate to this discussion about types of unionism and the models involved. And we've touched on it a little bit in the show. There are, of course, different types of unions and different ways of setting up a union and operating a union. And you have trade unions who sort of function almost like hiring halls to some extent, which operate quite differently from public sector unions. There's differences in terms of who all is in your union. Is it wall to wall? Does it cover the entire workplace? Or is it broken down by craft? There's really a conception of unions that has been, I would say, the majority of unions in the past several decades of, a service model where oftentimes the union themselves and certainly the union leadership third party themselves. Mm-hmm. We've talked a little bit about this. You and David did such a great job diving into the Amazon campaign and Bessemer and some of the anti-union talking points. And time again, anytime we're looking at union busting, one of the first things that the boss does is try to instill in the workforce that the union is an outside third party.
Right.
And unfortunately, we have unions and union leaders who go with that. They accept that logic from the boss and run with it.
Right.
And I think if you talk to a rank and file union member, ask them about their union, and do they say us or them? Mm-hmm. That's going to be the tell.
Right.
And I think David Cann did a great job there in talking about the way unions have often pitched themselves.
Right. And I mean, it's not like necessarily an untrue, and that's what makes it so enticing, is that
right.
it's an easy sell to make someone it's an easy sell to say, oh yeah, if I give you $13 or $30, $40 a month, $13 every paycheck, then I'll be protected. Well, sure, whatever. It's
right.
just like a Hulu subscription, but that's not if you just have 1,000 people with Hulu subscriptions, that's not a base of power. That's not going to be threatening to your boss. And ultimately, that's what a union has to be, is threatening to your boss. If you have 1,000 Hulu subscribers, that doesn't matter at all. You have to have power, people that are willing to that conceive of themselves as part of a union, as people who are in communion with their sisters and brothers on the job for the purpose of making their job better.
That it's us, not a them. It's an us. And I want to be very clear here and just expand on what you said, that it's not that service is not important. People join their unions for all kinds of reasons. And of course, one of the most immediate ones is for the protection it provides. And, if you get in trouble, you have someone who you can call and have some help. That is critical. That is important, and anybody who has the opportunity to get that protection needs to get that protection. So it's not to discount that. The services are very important, and the quality of representation and defense that you get, and the quality of the lawyers that you're provided. All of those things are very, very important. But you can't stop there.
Right.
And I think that's what you're touching on, is that because it's kind of the low-hanging fruit, it's the most, it's the least controversial.
Right.
Right? Because doctors and lawyers, they have liability insurance. So when you start to get down that road of selling yourself as an insurance policy, you start to act like an insurance agency, not a union, not grounded in a labor movement.
Right.
And, as you can imagine, this clip resonated with me quite a bit, having worked for an organization that won't even call themselves a union. Even though they're an affiliate of the largest teachers union in the country, one of the largest unions in the world, they won't even accept the label of union. They flat out themselves reject that and reject being part of the labor movement. In their eyes, that's the politically expedient thing to do to maintain their membership in conservative areas. That's a separate conversation there, but that's the disturbing thing is how many folks have worked their way to leadership in unions and quote unquote professional organizations that should be unions.
Right.
And who hold that kind of philosophy, and it is part of the recruiting. It's part of the internal organizing, such as it is. And unfortunately, in some of these cases, if there's any internal organizing going on, it's just making sure that your members know about the discounts they can get. It's making sure the members know, well, hey, if you have a workplace injury, you should call this number and we'll get you plugged into our attorney. That's not the same as internal organizing and real education. And that's one of the most important roles that unions have, is as an educator, by giving people the connections and relationships to learn from one another, giving people the resources they have to expand their knowledge, and helping to educate members on where their issues in the workplace connect to other workplaces and to the broader community and society and political economy. We have seen, as the labor movement has declined over the decades, that piece has really declined as well. But as you mentioned, there's been a trend away from that business unionism, service model unionism that is kind of focused on pitching an individual service and collaborating with the boss. There's been a very inspiring trend of broader organizing model and even social movement type unionism. And that's what we've seen in Chicago with the teachers union there, in the caucus of rank and file educators. And as you mentioned with John Deere and many of the strikes we've seen over the past year, we've seen workers take it really in their own hands and not simply just fall in line with what the union leadership has said. And that, again, I don't want to play into some of the right-wing tropes about quote-unquote union bosses. We've talked on this show before that, every union has its own varying degrees of democracy and varying degrees of leadership models and varying qualities of leaders, frankly.
As does any organization.
As does any organization. And I think any of the trends that you see in any organization, you can see in labor organizations where if you don't have a constant renewal of people coming in to step into leadership, to step into new roles, you start to see atrophy. And that's what you're discussing there, where in some cases, the best victories and the greatest gains are things that happened before your members were even born.
Right. And that's hard to organize people around when they don't even remember the last big win. Where people at John Deere, they now have, a few months ago, I remember winning 20% raise over the next 5 years, a 10% raise immediately, and an $8,500 signing bonus. That's what I remember personally, me in my life. That's a big deal, as opposed to hearing about something that happened 30 years ago,
and the collective
that you still benefit from.
The collective action part of
Right.
it is so important.
Right.
It's different even if you do get a win, but it's something that like your lobby team down at the state capitol pulled off, or your lobby team in DC pulled it off. That's great.
And in that case, it would be easy for the lobby team to say, "Oh, look what we did," as opposed to look what the power y'all gave us to work with did.
Right.
Like there would be even different ways to frame a lobbying victory that can feed into a model of service unionism, or a model of like David Cann was talking about, a model of unionism that puts the member first, that says our membership is where our power is, and things like this.
Absolutely.
Support for the Valley Labor Report comes from the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers Union. Learn more by visiting www.ifpte.org.